teachers, members of our visiting delegation, a member of the diplomatic corps. Before starting today's presentations, my duty will be to give you a general overview of the island of Balliceaux so that we can start this morning with a better understanding of the theme for this International Garifuna Conference, the island of Balliceaux, sacred lands or economic opportunities. Some information might be missing, some could maybe be challenged, but as today's conference, it is a start to encourage further interest and research. I'm very happy to see some students with us today, and I hope that you will enjoy your time spent with us. I am sure that you will definitely learn with today's presentations. I'm joining Mrs. Hamilton in feeling sorry that our students here do not get to really learn their rich local history and that it's not being promoted regionally as well. I'm hoping that events like today will also help to create more awareness and change that move in another way. I'm actually trying right now to work to push the government a little bit to change things locally, but very often the response is that the change needs also to be regional if we want to do something national. So, to come back as well on what was said also on my origins, it's true that I am French, but my mom is from Sicily and my daddy is Armenian from Turkey. And I don't know if you're very familiar with history of this part of the world, but the Armenians suffered from a genocide caused by the Turkish people, so I can really relay on that history of being from a diaspora and of carrying the trauma with you with generations. So this being said, we're going to take a glimpse into the geographic position of the island first, and we're going to look at its historical context and also sacrality. And then we're going to see its economical potential development with issues related to it for the indigenous peoples of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and their diaspora. So the island of Balliceaux Balliceaux itself seems to be a corruption of the French bel oiseau, which means pretty birds. According to the St. Vincent Handbook by Robert Anderson, published in 1938. It's located 40 miles south of the mainland St. Vincent. It's a 320 acres land, and 430 feet is its highest point. There's no water, no fruit trees, and no habitation on Balliceaux, just cattle and turtles. So why is it considered as a sacred land? Well, first, like other Grenadine islands, Balliceaux was probably a perfect temporary site for the indigenous peoples who probably used to stop on their way to or from the mainland or used it for fishing or hunting purposes. I am looking forward to hearing more about it with this morning's presentation. I know that there's definitely a need for more archaeological research there on the remains that we have on the island. So we have here some pictures of Balliceaux, where the only kind of habitation you will find are those little shacks that are used for the people who leave their cattle there. There are 2 beaches on Balliceaux, but it's pretty dry, pretty rough. Why also it's considered as sacred? Mainly because of the fact that this beautiful but rough island, as we said, hosted, well, if I may say, over 4,005 black Carib men, women, and children, including Chatoyer's son and the second-in-command Duvalier, who were exiled on the island in 1796 after they had to surrender from over 20 years of war for their land and freedom against the British colony established in 1763. And I'm not going back here in the previous century of Garifuna and Kalinago resistance against European invasion. But back on Balliceaux, with the spread of diseases and only few goods and supplies provided by the British or by the land, over 2,000 of them died in the 6 months while they were left there. while doing my research, I came across an interesting story that could seem not that interesting, but in an article in the Vincent newspaper of 1966, there's an article on the mystery of donkeys dying in Balliceaux. And apparently, Dr. Kirby and others went to do a research there to find out why those donkeys were dying. And it came out that they just could not survive there. There were just not enough water and food for them to survive, so they were just dying. So imagine those donkeys dying there. Imagine almost 5,000 people being left there for 6 months. So only 2,248 succeeded to make it to the conditions in Balliceaux. And on the 11th of March, 1797, 221 years and 2 days ago, they forcibly embarked again, this time to the island of Roatan in actual Honduras, where 2,026 of them arrived on the 12th of April, 1797. From Roatan, the Garifuna people made other encounters, and they now number over 300,000 people living in Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, Nicaragua, and the USA. They're still standing strong with their culture, language, and traditions, but also still impacted by the trauma of this journey through Balliceaux. Since 2001 and the proclamation of Paramount Joseph Chatoyer, as National Hero of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, pilgrimages are organized on the island almost annually, and the emotion shared by members of the diaspora on stepping on the island is just indescribable. You really have to experiment it. You have to feel it. I mean, even if you're not a Garifuna, you just feel like you got all of the history and that just comes into you. It's something that's really, I wish everyone could experiment just to understand really what's going on there. And there is no doubt that you're stepping on sacred land. In 2002, UNESCO proclaimed the Garifuna heritage and culture one of the intangible masterpieces of the heritage of mankind. In 2007, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was ratified by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And more recently, in 2016, the Amerindian Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was concluded by the Organization of American States. These documents seek to promote the rights of indigenous people to all aspects of their heritage and culture, including protection of sacred sites like Balliceaux, and may provide some new international interests for implementing and designing cultural preservation programs. As it was mentioned this morning by Mrs. Brown, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the presence of this morning of our visiting delegations from Suriname, Belize, Guyana, Dominica, and Trinidad. We held yesterday the first meeting to structure a Caribbean network of indigenous and tribal peoples formed as a result of a seminar held in Georgetown, Guyana on October 9 to 11, 2017, organized and supported by Impact Justice and funded by the Government of Canada. The objectives of the network would be to come up with solutions for indigenous peoples of the region to have a stronger voice, strengthen connection and solidarity, and have more effective influence on policies that can affect them. But however, all of this being done in the region, the national development priorities of governments or the domestic legal context and the legal rights of private citizens may impact the exercise of the rights granted under international conventions. We understand the sacred parts of Balliceaux. What about the issue of the land? Yesterday, during the opening address of Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, we learned interesting information from the case for Caribbean reparatory justice on land distribution after St. Vincent became British colony in 1763. Particularly, in our case, the Prime Minister mentioned that when the Black Caribs were transported to Balliceaux, the island was actually already private. It was a possession of a Mr. Campbell, I think he mentioned, and this Mr. Campbell was actually also receiving gracious rent for allowing the Garifuna people to stay or die on his estate. So it's not certain if another family purchased the island from the Campbells before that, but in 1899, the Linley family gained ownership of Balliceaux and Bataway, and they are still the owners to this date. They are represented by Barnard's Realty, and although it seems like the Linleys are not physically on the island, persons in Beckway are involved in maintaining and managing it. The mentioned pilgrimage to Balliceaux actually requires permission from the Linley family through their lawyer, and it could not be legally possible without their cooperation. But while Balliceaux is considered sacred lands for some, it can also be considered as a valuable economic opportunity for others. We're going to here take a two-minute break to watch a promotional video that I found on YouTube. So you really got a general overview of the island of Balliceaux. Located next to the rich and famous Mostic and to the refined Canouan Islands, Balliceaux is listed for sale since over 10 years and appears on several real estate websites at a price ranging from 27 million to 35 million US dollars, and this includes the island of Bataway. Balliceaux and Bataway are owned and on sale together. And Prime Minister yesterday mentioned that I think the price of Balliceaux alone will be like 22 million. He also mentioned yesterday that an offer was made in 2008, but the sale failed, according to him, because of the global economical crisis context of the time. On another hand, a member of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation doing some research on Balliceaux found this letter online. It's a little bit long, but it's a letter from Lambert Linley, one of the Linley family members, and he is actually complaining about a bid that came up for Balliceaux development. So I write in relation to a public notice published in the news on May 16, 2008 by the Physical Planning Board, which speaks on an application by Balliceaux Development, which seeks to construct a new residential commercial building on Balliceaux. And clearly here is saying that there's many beneficiaries involved in owning the land and that they did not agree to this and that this cannot be done and it cannot happen. And he's saying, aside from this and having seen the existing plans for the Balliceaux development that are lodged at the Physical Planning and Development Board, some of the beneficiaries of Thomas Franklin Linley, including myself, collectively share concerns about the proposed developmental plans for Balliceaux and Bataway. We are of the opinion that the nature of the proposed development will, one, permanently destroy the environmental, excuse my French, integrity of Balliceaux and Bataway. These islands are among the last bastions of hope for wildlife protection and conservation of the natural environment of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Actually, Bataway is not really proposed to constructions, and it was said it's more like a bird sanctuary. And then it's mentioned also will obliterate the significance of the history of Balliceaux and Bataway to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, now and in the future. This is particularly in reference to the Garifuna people who suffered tremendously at the hands of the early settlers. This proposed development will be grossly disrespectful to the memory of the indigenous peoples, especially those who lost their lives on Balliceaux and those who were exiled to Central America in 1797. In our view, there is absolutely no aspect of this development that can sustainably profit the beneficiaries of Thomas Franklin Linley, the Garifuna peoples, or future generations of Vincentian people. So we here actually have a member of the family recognizing what the Garifuna history on the island, opposing even development on it. But we don't really have much more details on how it's really dealt with regarding the family that owns it, but we know that last year as well, another offer came up to Prime Minister. And this time he contacted the Garifuna Heritage Foundation to know their position on the offer. The Garifuna Heritage Foundation, who also consulted with other members of Garifuna communities in St. Vincent and in the diaspora, opposed the sale of Balliceaux and wished to see it recognized as a protected national heritage site. We can find more, but here are some examples of websites that advertise the sale of Balliceaux. So one of them, well, it's the content. I don't really have a good internet connection to show you actually the site, but it is on Private Islands Online for this one. It refers to Balliceaux as the Cinderella of the Grenadines. And you see that there's some historical information. And further down, we also have exquisite golden beaches arc around bays on Balliceaux's eastern and western shores, while the island's high point, Gun Hill, was a lookout for soldiers during the Carib Wars of 1772-1797. There are still artifacts to be found from these days, and then possibly other treasures that a pirate would have left. But we are definitely aware that there's a lot of artifacts and remains that can still be found on Balliceaux, and that more research is urgently needed. Some sites, one of the sites, for example, he's severely suffering from sea erosion, and we are just losing everything to the sea slowly and slowly. Well, not that slowly, unfortunately. However, archaeological research cannot be conducted at the moment, and also because of the sale of Balliceaux, because digging the land might take on the value of the sale. Some sites show some of the history, some others don't really mention the history, but emphasize on the potential economical perspectives presented by its development. We saw that some interest has been shown over the years by potential investors, and the idea of allocating a parcel of land dedicated to the Garifuna heritage was also raised, but still never convinced Garifuna communities and institutions in St. Vincent nor among the diaspora. So, to conclude, I hope that this overview allowed you to have a clearer mind on Balliceaux, and that together we will be able to raise the issue that we call for this conference on how to strategize or theorize the relationship between cultural heritage preservation, sacred sites, and economic development in the Caribbean regarding the case here of Balliceaux. We heard yesterday Dr. Hume's excellent address offering different perspectives to study, and we are looking forward to listening to today's presentations and maybe find additional paths to explore in the preservation of Balliceaux's Garifuna heritage. Thank you.